Does Christianity have a solution? When it comes to crime and punishment,
It's Christ.
there isn't anything.
So there is.
Yeah, but the question is, we're talking about the Arabic language itself. Even though the Quran can have words of different linguistic origin,
Let me just ask on this. I don't have enough specific.
the heckler is going to remain silent because there is no solution.
Hey.
No, but there is such a thing in Christianity. Adultery is also a capital sin, right?
Sorry?
Adultery in Christianity is also a capital sin.
But what's the punishment?
Well, I don't know about the specific punishment, but there is a thing within.
No, it's not about.
I don't know enough about.
Camille, I agree with you. The ontological status of certain crimes in the sight of God can be given, like seeing a woman with lust is committing adultery in the heart. But there is no punishment saying do a heart surgery and remove the heart, for example, or remove the eyes. There is nothing there. There is no consequence of that sin.
So there's no specific consequence, but that doesn't mean that there's no consequence.
How do you establish peace and tranquility on this earth on a practical level?
Let me give you an example. So in the Quran, when it says that you shouldn't eat pork, right?
Okay.
But there's no punishment that specifies if you don't eat pork.
If you don't eat pork, yes, principles of Islam, because it's sin and sinful, can be derived. It could be as I said, particularly this example, if I don't know personally, it could be from the Prophet ﷺ. Whoever ate pork, for example, he could have punished, the companion could have punished, and so on and so forth. So we have all of this example at place. I'm sure some people will just say, yeah, there is something there, President.
Okay,
but when it comes to, no, because these are foundational principles existing in our source of law. In Christianity, the source of a law is not the people's own mind. It has to be foundationally rooted in
the church in Christianity. That's just a different.
And so if the Pope decides, you'd agree?
Yeah, but
whatever. Do you agree with that?
Well, I mean, as I said before, I have lots of issues with Christianity.
So if you don't, then you can't apply that. We have to be consistent.
No, but that's how it is derived, and that's a valid way. Whether you agree or not, that's a different answer. That's a different question. Sorry, but it is a valid way of deriving rule to say we have the text and then we have the church.
Okay, according to the Pope, what's the punishment?
For what?
Adultery.
For adultery, I'm not sure actually, but it might be excommunication.
Does anyone know? I mean, just this is for sake of information for both of us. I don't know, and Camilla doesn't know. Does anyone know? According to the Pope, no interjection. He can only say what the punishment is, and that's it. I don't like hecklers.
And that he is making an assertion that for some reason the Bible has to have a detailed list of punishments for crimes, implying that Christ didn't come here to free us from sin, but actually he came here to establish some sort of like jurisprudential system on earth, which is not what Christ came to do. So the standard he is placing...
He answered your question already. He did not come to do jurisprudential system.
Yeah, but
He answered you already. There's no point going any further.
Because Christ said himself that his kingdom...
Thank you, heckler. You helped her to understand and appreciate.
That's why he's a friendly heckler.
When the Muslims try to make these arguments, that supposedly they have a complete system. No, they don't. It's a made-up system. There are always new scenarios that pop up that they have no answers for. So they have to go to their random ulamas to make up a solution to it.
We don't make up solutions.
I mean,
so now...
that's like what you're describing is...
Did you understand?
But
there is no jurisprudential system Christ came with, complete. That is now answering to the question that, does Christianity have a solution? When it comes to crime and punishment,
it's Christ.
There isn't anything. On a practical level, there is not. You marry to Christ and your solution is solved.
Exactly.
He says exactly. See, that's what I mean.
Following the laws is redundant. That's my point.
Can I talk?
Yes. Camille, go ahead.
Okay, so yes, in the Bible there isn't a specific punishment, etc. But if you look at the guidance of the Catholic Church, adultery is forbidden.
No, I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about the status of a crime, whether it's crime or not. I'm talking about punishment. Crime without punishment.
You don't need punishment.
I'll tell you something, Camille. This is why I have to really explain a little bit.
There's no punishment.
When there is
for eating pork.
Wait. Of course there will be punishment.
But there's a punishment in your.
No. There probably will be. In an Islamic state, if somebody goes and starts eating pork and sells pork and so on, there will be consequences.
That's not found in the Quran.
Look. As I said, Quran is not the only source of Islamic law.
So where does it come from? It comes from.
Do you agree in principle? If we have crimes with no punishment, would it increase the crime, decrease the crime, or it will remain the crime rate the same? If there are crimes and there is no punishment associated with this crime, my question to you is threefold. Would it increase the crime, decrease the crime, or neutral, it doesn't increase or decrease the crime?
I don't understand your question. What do you mean?
Imagine now,
Decrease.
a crime is about murder. Murder. Someone murders someone. If there is no punishment of murder in a society, would murder increase, decrease, or remain the same?
Okay, so what is the punishment is a deterrent to the behaviour? Is
No,
what
no.
you're talking about?
Essentially, you will come to, but do you agree crime without its associated punishment is not going to make the society any better? Society to thrive and function,
Crime
you
is-
need...
sorry, yeah, but it depends whether the punishment is in this life or in the afterlife.
No, I'm talking about this life,
But
this
they-
life.
But there's lots.
This life.
Yeah,
In a
but-
practical level, take the example of murder. If somebody commits murder, one person, two person, whole community, all the black people murdered, all the Chinese murdered, all the white people murdered, all the Bengalis murdered, whatever, right? If murder takes place and there is no associated punishment, my question to you to explore, would murder as a crime increase, decrease, or remain the same?
It would increase.
It would increase. Agree. Anyone disagree with her?
No, but
No,
Why-
everyone agree with me?
Everyone agrees with you.
Oh, they agree with me.
I said anyone disagree. The reason why, because those people who have something in their heart, a feeling against other person, they will murder that person because there is no accountability, there is no consequence, there is no punishment, there is no deterrent. That is why if there was a punishment associated with it, it will make this into a check. Either stops it altogether, minimizes it, or decreases the crime.
Yes.
It will never increase. That's why Islam,
Yes.
Camille.
yeah. But I'm just
Do you agree now in Christianity, because there is no punitive penal system, it doesn't have a practical solution to decrease crime?
Well, the practical solution, which I think actually Islam also agrees with, that ultimately it's not about the world,
No, it's about this one.
Yeah,
ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Oh Lord, oh Lord, give us the good in this world and in the hereafter, and save us from the punishment of hellfire. So, as Muslims, we follow how to live our life in this world as best as we can, with justice, fairness, compassion, mercy, truthfulness, and also think about our ultimate abode in the hereafter. We don't just simply become ascetic, go into a mountain cave and live like a what's called an ascetic. We don't do that. So Islam caters the need of this world as well as the need of the hereafter. In Christianity, as we say, because it doesn't cater for a practical solution to the practical problems of this world, here or in an Amazonian jungle community, or 2 billion years later, if the world was still alive, people to remain there, in the absence or the lack of a practical solution, Christianity cannot be universalized religion, and that is why it cannot be a true religion that you are talking about. That is why Islam, which claims to be the finality of religion, the complete religion, the religion which is for all times and all places, it becomes the one for people to reflect on, to accept. Camille, do you agree?
Well, wait, hang on. Agree with what the fact that
Christianity doesn't have a practical solution to adultery.
Yeah, but so, as we were saying at the beginning, it's not because a religion has all of the answers to the practical solution that it makes it.
It's not about a religion which claims to be from God to be a final religion. It must have a solution. Do you agree?
Well, I mean, so for instance, if you take all the examples that you gave, there's no Christian that would advocate for, adultery, murder, or any, they are practical.
How do we deal with them? So when someone commits an adultery in a Christian family today, what is the solution of this problem?
In UK, you still abide by the law of the land, right? You abide by the law.
Every Muslims are striving to establish the law of God on this earth. It's not just in Saudi Arabia or in Pakistan, in this world. It was implemented at one time, but it got dismantled because of internal or external things. But we are striving to bring it back because we know that's what the solution is. In the meantime, we are contracted in certain countries to be what? faithful to the contracts that we have. But that doesn't mean we consider this is the best solution. We know what the solution is. We're striving towards it. That is the solution. Christianity doesn't have a solution. Instead, the solution it has is one about what? That you let the adulteress go free.
But it has, so if you go to the Vatican, for instance, right, which is a city...
Camille, just want to answer the heckler's point. An adulterous woman came. Right? People brought her to be punished. Guess what Christ did?
Okay.
There was a law that was beforehand.
Righty.
If anyone commits adultery, you should stone her to death, right? Okay. So what did Christ do? As a judge, as a man appointed on earth to implement God's law, did he implement the law that was given by God earlier? Did he stone her to death?
God's law.
Did he implement the laws of God?
Don't forget that.
Christ came with the law of God. Christ came to say, "Oh, our Lord."
Christ came here to free us from
Camille,
the sin.
do you remember? I'm not speaking to him now. I'm speaking to you.
You were, Mansur.
Do you remember
Okay,
Lord's
don't
Prayer?
me, Mansur, right here.
Your kingdom come.
Right. So
Thine will be done.
moved on.
Thine will be done.
So Lord's Prayer.
The will of God to be done.
Froggy Mansur.
Where?
Love it.
On earth.
On earth.
That's it.
Right. So Christ, if he's here as a representative of God, whether as a prophet,
That's
a warner,
what
or a
he's
messenger,
here for. He's here as God on earth, not representative. As God.
he needs to implement the law when a crime is committed. Imagine now.
Show me
Okay,
anywhere
imagine.
in the Bible where it says Christ
Imagine
came
God.
to implement the
I want
law.
you to have a thought experiment.
Okay, I'm just going to
Come this way.
have you.
No, I'm not talking to him. Camille, I'm not speaking to him.
I'll come in.
Camille, if you find it's distracting, you need to tell him off.
Let me just...
Tell him off if it's distracting. If God came on earth, brother, 1 second, try to understand one thing. Imagine God in a certain belief system came on earth and there were crimes being committed. Camille, are you going to be dictated by your conversation?
Should we time it 2 minutes?
Camille,
No.
are you going to be dictated?
Let me actually talk to him.
Yeah.
Come back to that.
Go.
Okay,
Thank you.
so you're saying.
I think it's right time you tell him off not to interfere with your discussion.
I think it's right time that we tell you off, Mansur. We're talking too much.
Wait,
Quiet for a second.
If it's distracting, we can have another
I'm
time.
asking a question. We'll come back to it.
Right. So the scenario I am illustrating, if God came on earth in a belief system and there are crimes being committed, crimes of murder, rape, and so on and so forth, right? Stealing. Let's take the 3 examples. Murder, rape, and stealing. God on earth, he comes here and he says, I am not going to do any implementation of punishment. That's not my job. That's not my role. That's not my mission. What he's going to do, he's going to let them go and say, you know what? You punish them according to your secular laws, not my laws. Does that make sense? Would it make sense if God was to do things like that?
Yeah, but ultimately, secular laws...
No, think about it. God on earth, imagine now God on earth, right? There's God over there on earth.
But I don't believe that...
No. Just to understand the scenario that Christians are bringing.
Yeah.
God is over there. Everyone knows he's God, let's say for the sake of argument, and people are stealing, raping, killing people, right? Now, these criminals, what's going to happen to them? God on earth doesn't do anything. In fact, people then, instead of going to God, what I'm going to do? Are you going to punish them or not? God, without any information from God, they go to Caesar. They go to this leader, that king. Would that make any sense?
My kingdom is not this earth.
Would that make any sense?
But I think it could make sense.
I have a question for you.
Can we take that question if you don't mind?
Okay.
Well,
She's not a heckler. Not on my list.
I don't know much about Muhammad, but so Muhammad, if he was on earth and somebody did something, Muhammad would punish them?
Not himself. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam being, when he was a state leader, there would have been a system of governance, laws and for punishment and crime. And based on that, being a statesperson,
But Muhammad wouldn't punish them.
No. It's not. I'm answering. Not individually, because he has established a state in which there will be a judge. There will be a judge in which the crime will be established, and then the punishment on an established criminal will be implemented.
But don't you think that's the same in Christianity? Because they have I'm non-religious, by the way. Used to be a Catholic, so, but so we have the 10 Commandments that we shouldn't do these things. You know, so don't you think it's a similar,
the example-
similar thing?
It's not similar. I would wish it was like that, but it's not in practical level. So the example, the practical level, if someone now commits adultery,
Right.
having sexual relations outside marriage,
Right.
Christianity does not offer a punishment for this criminal behavior.
It's okay. So let's just say right here in England.
On this slide.
Let's just say right here in England, and a woman, you know, a Muslim woman commits adultery. You're going to stone her to death in
No,
England?
no, I'm not asking for what
don't
punishment.
think so.
I'm saying, according to the law of God, how does the law of God take care of instability in a
How are you
society?
going to do that
No,
here?
no, no, it's not me in
I'm
mine.
asking you a question. I mean,
The answer is this.
Yes,
Christianity does not offer a solution.
but neither does the Muslim religion. In
We have a
England.
solution. No, in England, Muslims are not in power.
You're not in. I'm
Muslims-
I'm truthfully curious. I really am.
Muslims are not in power in a legislative sense in England,
Right.
where they do not implement Islamic law
Right.
and implement crime and
There is a
punishment
little
system.
bit of Islamic
No, no,
law here. A little
not in the legislative body.
But
This country is not run by Sharia law.
Yes.
So because of the absence of the Sharia law, Muslims cannot expect the adulteress to be punished in the Islamic way because it's not run by Islamic law. It's a secular country. But if you have a country in which they implement Islamic law, they can implement the punishment to an adulteress. So the question we were talking about,
Do you think in this day and age now that most Muslim men, I don't know how many are here, would want a woman to be stoned to death?
the question is not about the modality of punishment. The question is about whether there is a punishment and can it be implemented to stabilize the society. Islam as a holistic, to give you an example, can I, and then I'll come back to Camille, is that okay? Islam gives a system of, for example, you know what, you cannot steal because stealing is taking away the rights of another person.
Right.
And stealing carries, after it's established that this person didn't have a need to steal, and it was secured on a lock and key, and he broke or she broke on that lock and key and stole it. It wasn't like, you know, hanging off £1 million on the back pocket and walking in the public. It wasn't like that. It was from a safe, locked under lock and key, and it was all the security measures. The one who stole, he was not a billionaire with no need. Sorry, he was not someone who was like a poor person with a need and so on and so forth, right? All of that things, and once crime is established, this person will be punished by cutting off the hands.
Right.
Right. Now, if it is established that this person stole a bread from a supermarket because they were dying of starvation, no food, no one offered, no neighbor offered food for him to live, no state as a body gave him this food, the punishment of cutting the hands would not be applicable, cannot be applied. Anyone disagree? Anyone disagree? Raise your hands.
Probably can.
Look around.
Actually.
Okay, how many Muslims are there? Raise your hands.
How many what?
Muslims.
Oh.
And how many of you disagree? No one. Why?
I disagree.
Because he's not a Muslim. So now, as you realize,
Nobody gave them.
there are conditions. You can ignore him, he's a heckler.
Arguments.
There
How would you
are,
know if it was true?
there are conditions.
4 witnesses, 12.
I cannot, I'm trying to answer you, but he's distracting. So there are conditions which needs to be met before punishment is implemented. But the fact of the matter is, when the system of governance is in place, it cannot be only crime and punishment, it has to be holistic. Education system, social system, moral system, all of that. Because people need to be educated that stealing is wrong. You cannot punish someone without telling them stealing is wrong.
But don't we as a society, I mean, given religion different, everybody knows you shouldn't steal.
But
Whether you're religious or not religious.
But the issue is not everyone steals.
Right.
So those who steal, we need to deal with them to prevent them from stealing your money, your house, your jewelry. We need to stop doing that because you have your right of your own property. That should not be.
You don't think the laws of the land are enough?
They're not sufficient. That's why Islam has a complete solution. So if you turn to Camille. So the example principle I've given you demonstrates Christianity of today doesn't have the foundational principles of being an universal religion.
Let's come back to the specific prescriptions of the religion maybe in the future discussion, but I wanted to come back actually to a completely different topic.
Sure. Okay, everyone, pay attention.
Right, back on track.
Pay attention, everyone, to Camille.
Carry on going.
Brother,
Guys, go ahead.
don't speak to a heckler.
Hey, stay where you are, my dude. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. I was waiting for that.
About time you implemented the law.
Alright, anyways, so the thing I'm actually interested in right now is like the evidence for Islam, right? So last time we talked about the prophecies, the miracles, and we talked about
Why aren't there evidence for Islam?
what's that?
Why are they not evidence for Islam?
Yeah. So one, you said,
Take care.
so I mean,
Before you go, sorry, before you go. Just 1 second, sorry. We would, from the bottom of our heart, invite you to look into Islam and accept Islam, become a Muslim, which is surrendering yourself to the will of God.
I don't believe in any religion.
No, it's not about religion. It's about knowing the one who created you and thanking and being grateful to that creator. Because you and I know I did not create the universe.
Right,
Neither did you.
Yeah.
So it's to be thankful and grateful to that creator of ours. And we say this is the one who is worthy of our worship.
Well, I'm interested in all religions, to be honest.
So this is
clear.
so the one who's worthy of our worship, the one who's worthy of our worship is the one that we are asking you to embrace him and follow the law and the will and the guidance to that, and that is Islam. If you didn't know much about it, I'm sure my friends and my brothers and sisters are more than willing to explain to you because I'm engaged here, not engaged in the sense, but in a conversation.
Come back next Sunday and see what
We can have a talk discussion. But please speak to my brothers and my sisters over there. Right?
Bye.
You take care. Until then.
So I would like to say, by the way, thank you for your time. Thank you for taking that time with me. I really appreciate it. And despite all of the heckling going on, it's an enjoyable discussion personally. At least I'm doing that genuinely in the spirit of truth. I'm not here to cut anyone down. I'm just really interested in what you've got to say. I will push back if I don't, what I think you're saying doesn't make sense to me. But
Would you be interested if you didn't have any counter back?
yeah, exactly.
If you agreed with everything, you would be Muslims by all of them. But at the end of the day, we would like you to become a Muslim, and that's why I'm willing to take your pushbacks and try to answer them as you go along.
All right, so I wanted to come back to prophecies, as in the actual kind of evidence for Islam.
Yeah.
If you take away the prescriptions and stuff like that. So this, prophecies and miracles don't really speak to me in general. I think, and that also applies to biblical miracles, by the way. I don't think that those are particularly.
Sure.
I don't really resonate with that. But just for sake of argument, one point that you mentioned last time, you mentioned this book of 500 miracles that the Prophet did.
I said 300 miracles. Yeah.
300, sorry. But the Quran itself states, I think, several times that there were no signs given to Muhammad.
No, this is what we explained before as well. This is what the Quranic picture of what a miracle is. Anytime miracle is sent, people in their habitual nature, they disbelieve in the miracles. So God says, "Ma mana'aka." Nothing has prevented me from sending miracles except the people of the past disbelieve in them. So in general, God is not willing to provide miracles to make people believe, because people in their nature, they disbelieve in the miracles. So even when he sends miracles, they keep on disbelieving in it. That's point number one. Point number two, God does not give in to people's demand of miracles. They say, okay, you know what? Give me a mountain of gold, I will believe, for example. He's not going to give in to this kind of miracles because these are silly claims people want to make, even if it was there, because the Quran says, even if there were mountains of gold, stairs going up to heaven, the dead were to speak, they will still not believe. Because belief is not just what they're demanding miracles for as a belief, it's something which is in their heart, the stubbornness and arrogance and pride, and many of their psyche, the ego, that's the problem, not about the evidence. So Quran does not in any way say, oh, Prophet Muhammad was not going to be given any miracles. The Quran says miracles is a matter of time, but it will never be given according to their dictates, and the Quran says that when the miracles are given, the ayats are given. The example I've given you about the splitting the moon. وَإِذَا رَأَوْا, when they see this sign, they say this is this is magic, perpetual magic and so on. So miracles were performed by the Prophet. The Quran does not somehow say no, it didn't. The Quran affirms that was the case, but people's reaction is it's magic. And the Quran reprimands them. Like, what's there for you not to believe? You see it with your own eyes and you disbelieve. So these are the people that really we're going to have a good accountability in the hereafter, because seeing something in front of their eyes, which it cannot be accounted for as a natural thing that people do, like magic and things like that. Some people learn this trick. When they could see clearly, if you and I were there and the sea parted by the staff of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, Camille, are you going to just say, let me rub my eyes? What am I saying? Am I having some kind of delusions or some narcotic gas? You're not going to see that. You see that on front of your face. This is called Ainul Yaqeen. This is your truth, reality of your own eyes. You saw that in your own eyes. You're not going to question like, oh, this didn't happen. That will be an evidence against you at that point if you didn't believe in it. So when miracles do happen, and some people just disbelieve in them by saying this is a magic, like they did with Christ and they did with Moses, these people will really have no excuse in the day of judgment. In that judgment day, they will have to account, okay, here, that was an evidence in front of you. Why did you disbelieve and reject the evidence? What are they going to say? Oh, I was deluded? Because there will be no counter back. There will be no pushback from them because they cannot argue against it. Because you could not explain that this was not a miracle performed by a prophet and a messenger. That's what we're talking about. Quran affirms miracles of the Prophet. And one of the examples I've given you, the Quran clearly says, is about splitting the moon. When they see, وَإِذَا رَأَوْا, when they see, they see that.
The Quran
ignore the heckler. I'm not. No, don't even listen to the heckler.
Commentators say that that's a sign of the end times, not Muhammad doing it. So actually, you're right, Camille. There's nowhere in the Quran where it says that.
So this is the chapter here.
It talks about the miracles of Musa, of Isa, even Abraham, but not Muhammad. It's Surah 54, verse 1.
To me, that the splitting,
our junior and the moon did rent asunder. It's happened, right?
Yeah. Nowhere. You can even read Tafsir al-Quran by Sayyid Maududi.
I'm not gonna take this example out of thin blue. Historical event, and
it hasn't happened yet.
When they see a miracle, they turn aside and they say transient magic.
Where's Muhammad 9 times?
وَكَذَّبُوا, and they call a lie and they disbelieve. This is in past tense, and follow their low desires, and their affair has to be appointed time. So when they saw this, they called it magic and they disbelieved in it.
Yeah, but he's got a point in that Muhammad. It's not a performed specifically by Muhammad.
Hang on. Who did this miracle?
Well, according to Sayyid Maududi.
No. In here,
Indian,
during the time of the Prophet, the Quran was given to him, right? And he's doing that. Now what we're going to do is, we're going to be so hyper-skeptical, we're going to say the Prophet didn't exist, he didn't say this, all the hadith are not... Try to understand.
I like it.
The hadith that talks about that this is a historical event that took place like this nature, this is the reaction of his people, we're going to disbelieve... Exactly, see? Hadith came later, Quran came later. How much are we going to dismantle this skepticism of the historians which are known as revisionists? Revisionism is a school of thought in historical criticism in which they try to reject all of the historical details and say, maybe he didn't exist, maybe the people didn't exist, maybe Mecca didn't exist. Do you know that?
Yeah.
They're even talking about saying Mecca didn't exist. Subhanallah, the Prophet didn't exist. So what do we say about these people? The hyper-skeptic revisionist, you are against the historical memory of the people, going against the data. We have historical data of a place, of the people, and their artifacts, and their beliefs, and their systems, and their writings, all of it. How much do you want? Writings after writing, in inscriptions, in papyri, in writings and later works. No sane historian would doubt, for example, Prophet Muhammad existed and he preached in Arabia and he had this kind of belief about him. No sane wonder. Hyper-skeptic, revisionist, fruitcakes may believe in that. Just like hyper-skeptic revisionist fruitcakes believe Jesus did not exist.
Yeah.
Oh, he accepts Jesus doesn't exist because
he didn't claim to be God.
Camille.
Don't engage with him now.
That's fine. Come to me about
You're right. You're right. I'm corrected.
You can't help me.
We
Okay.
agree there are Christians, because of this consistency approach, they will say, because we have a historian who doubts the existence of Christ, Christ didn't exist. They need to be consistent. So now maybe that is the view. Christianity didn't exist. All of these writings, come on, doesn't matter. Do you see the point? So that's why we call them fruitcakes, because these are hyper-skeptics. They go against history. So when it comes to miracles,
What happens when the Quran says that Christ was crucified? Isn't that being a
Great, my conversation with him. Stop it.
Go for it, but it's interesting. Okay, that's fine. No worries.
do you understand English? She said go away.
No, say it in Arabic, Mansur, please.
She said go away.
In Arabic, Mansur. Appreciate it.
Go away. She said go away, not me.
Okay, sorry.
She said go away.
No problem. Go for it.
She said go away.
Fine. Sorry, you were saying.
He has no respect for you.
It's okay, but that's what hecklers do. I'm sure there's,
Right, I agree that you've understood. Now we're in the same boat, that you agree that he's a heckler. Good. So now we move on. So
But to say, there's probably, I don't know about...
So that book about 300 authentic miracles, you, in your mind, is this. The Quran denies the miracle performed by the Prophet ﷺ, so how can he have done miracles? As I explained to you, the Quran does not deny. The Quran denies what thing? Miracles as expected by people, demanded by people. God doesn't give in to these kind of things. God gives his own miracle. And that's why you'll find within the Christian text, there's one point Christ said, I think I mentioned this before, no sign will be given to you except the sign of Jonah. So Christ himself make a condition. I'm not going to give you all the signs that you demand. Do this, do that, whatever. Nothing will be given to you. No sign, except one sign. So here we have a consistency of the messengers in terms of how they deal with these kind of hecklers at their times, trying to give me evidence. They do not fall for their trap, right? And their ego business of, give me something I will believe. In fact, they would not believe. So the Quran tells us that this is a miracle. The Quran, it says itself consists of evidence, ayat. Every single verse, we don't use the word verse, but you know what a verse is, a sentence, is called an ayah of the Quran. An ayah is a miracle, a sign, a proof, an evidence, all of that. Quran itself, in its individual component, is called a miracle.
Yes, I want to come back to that, because that's probably, actually, of all the things that we talked about, that's the only thing, probably the one that speaks to me the most, is the inimitability of the Quran. I think it's because I'm a linguist,
Did you watch ChatGPT?
I did, it was really interesting, yeah. I need to do more research on this.
Please do.
Yeah. You mentioned actually in that video, you mentioned the lectures that you did on the and I couldn't find those.
So the lectures are called I'll show you which ones, so you can listen to them. There's 3 parts, 3 lectures in 3 occasions. So let's see which ones they're called in DawahWise. I mean, what it will save me from giving you all the information that I did in three parts, right? Right. Okay. It's called Linguistic Miracle of the Quran.
Okay.
There's 3 parts in DawahWise. Yeah?
Okay.
So originally it was uploaded in a different one, so that's fine.
Okay. So yes, I mean, I don't want to get into too much detail on that, but that's probably out of all the things that I've heard, that's the only one that I can't be watching your video is actually really interesting too. And I think that's probably in the visual mind of actually learning Arabic and understanding how it works. So I can't really debate that, but the superficial understanding that I have is that it might have been because the Quran was actually influenced by other languages like Syriac or that kind of stuff. Is there anything to that? Is that something you addressed in the lectures?
Yeah, but the question is, we're talking about the Arabic language itself. Even though the Quran can have words of different linguistic origin, the fact remains the composition of such a way. It's not just individual vocabulary. Like, for example, the word alliyin, the word sirat, they may have a cognate or something similar preceding the Arabic language, but the Quran can either use something from another linguistic culture and use it and Arabize it to the Arabic people for their understanding, because no need to reinventing wheel within the Arabic grammatical linguistic vocabulary structure, within the framework of the Arabic vocabulary, because you know how the words are derived. For example, the word globalization didn't exist in the Arabic corpus. But now, what does it say in Arabic? Globalization? Awlama. The root words are ayn, lam, mim. Right. To know. Alima, ya'lamu, to know. And from this, like, you can derive so many different meanings. Globalization, where you can have the world, and because of a root word, it can have meaning attached to it. For example, the word alaqa, the Quran says how human beings go through the stages of alaqa. And people say, oh, that's wrong, it doesn't mean that. But if you look at the word alaqa, in its root word means it's some connection, something that is hanging. So a mu'allaq, that you know, if you see some traditional places in my country or in Arab country, they make something with rope and so on, and they hang their pots and things on that. This is called mu'allaq, right? Alaqat, relationship, because we hang with each other, right? So each word can be derived from a root word. This is beauty of Arabic language, and of course probably Semitic language the same, right? So when it comes to the Quran and its linguistic miracle, of course the Quran brings in new terms which the Arabs didn't know them before, but it Arabizes them from the Arabic stock. So the word Quran itself, you'll be surprised, was not known to the Arabs what it meant. There is no pre-Islamic poetry which has the word Quran in it, because it didn't, this particular form, Quran, did not exist in their vocabulary. So the Quran introduced even the name of this book, which they're not familiar with, but something from a root word, qara'a, is meant to recite, to read, and so on, in that form. The word surah, a chapter, was not known to the people in this meaning. Surah was like a fence. But the Quran is introducing a meaning, and it describes suratun anzalna, and so on, and it tells you what it means, at the same time defines it. It has a border, a fence all around it, a thematic unity. The word ayah, verse, and ayah wasn't known to them in the meaning. To them, ayah had a different meaning. So the Quran introduces even the words with a newer meaning and explains and defines as it goes along. So the new linguistic the new language the Quran brings, which they couldn't have thought about, the Quran within its recitation, it explains it. So people didn't have, oh, you're speaking gibberish. You know, when a child speaks gibberish, after hearing few times, a mother or a father, a brother, sister, doesn't know what it means. If you heard it first time, you didn't know what it means. The child speaks gibberish. The Quran came and spoke in a language which was unknown to them, but they understood. Not only that this is an eloquent way of expressing it, but they understood the meaning, and yet it wasn't in their vocabulary. That is the linguistic secrets of the Quranic language.
I'll watch your videos and I'll come
Please do, please do.
To me, that's the only one where everything else I'm kind of like, that doesn't really...
Contradictions. What about the contradiction claim? If the Quran was not from any other, if the Quran was not from God, it was from anyone else other than God, then you will find many ikhtilafan.
Yeah, well, that I never really quite understood that point, because to me there are lots of places that seem to contradict each other.
No. Do you agree in principle? A book from God talking about history, about future, about contemporary affairs, about secrets of your heart, about the natural world, about politics, anthropology, sociology, all these things. If a book from God is talking all about it, it should be free from errors and contradictions. Or should it be?
In principle, yes, but if it's been mediated through humans, then it's subject to errors.
No, first of all, in principle, this is what I'm asking, you expect a book of God should be free from errors. So when the Quran makes that claim that this is the Quran with all its forms of guidance on every aspect of life, it talks about embryology, it talks about astrophysics, it talks about biology, it talks about the ancient East and ancient West. If it wasn't from God, you expect it to be contradictory, erroneous, having lots of discrepancies. It's not that any book on any matter if it's free from contradictions from God. A phone book may be free from contradictions, but it doesn't make it from God. But the phone book does not talk about the ancient world and the future world and the humans and the natural world. If it did, then you expect it to contain mistakes.
But then on that point, then why would verses be abrogated then?
No, abrogation is of what? Abrogation, God says very clearly that ma nansakh min ayatin aw nunsiha. Is it how it goes? Anyone knows the ayah? We do not. What's the ayah? نأتي بخير منها أو مثلها. Right? So he does not abrogate or makes an ayah forgotten until he brings something better or similar to it. It's all about making the society in the, what's this called, rehabilitating them and making them. So God can condition a society with a certain particular specific laws, and then he will say, that's fine, now we have different laws. Just like, say, a law of Adam alayhi salam and his children, how they had to twin sets had to marry each other, human beings to procreate, because there wasn't another human being separately created and they married, because only one man and one woman, from them we all came. So the law of, for example, marrying sisters and brothers is now no longer applicable, but at that time it was okay. So God, for a community, he can instill and give guidance and laws, and he can say these are no longer necessary for now, but for future that is not necessary.
Well, then why would certain verses like the one about slavery not be abrogated then?
Could be slavery will be, as I said, certain laws can be there because it will take long time, as we explained before, to get it eliminated. Or slavery will be there such that it will be very difficult to eliminate, so that means conditions may be there and you need to have rules and regulations and solutions for it.
So we're getting new Quran verses like sometime in the future?
Do you follow? So God here is not abrogating slavery. This is a law. He is trying to encourage it to be eliminated through the processes and mechanism God has put in place.
Can God ever make a mistake?
What do you think?
I'm asking you. In your
I will answer, but what do you think?
No. I'm asking your opinion of it.
I will answer.
So that's why I'm asking.
Sure.
Wait.
God will never make mistakes.
So God can never make a mistake?
Of course not.
Okay, so everything that we are going through right now, every error in the world, every disaster that we're going through, along with all the good, that's all part of God's plan. Is that what you're telling me, yeah?
I'm telling you, anything that happens, it happens with the will of God.
Yeah, I know, listen, the will, I'm not very concerned about the will. I'm saying, is he aware? Is that part of
He's
the
aware.
plan? So everything's going to plan.
Nothing can go against his plan.
So
everything is going to his plan.
Right.
Nothing can go against the plan of God.
Right, so all of the disasters that are going on right now, that
Everything.
This is part of God's plan.
Everything.
In order to do what? What's the process? What's the end? What's the end?
Hang on.
What's the end?
What I want to understand is this. One second. Before I go into answering one question after like a series of questions.
Sorry,
No problem. I want to understand one thing.
Yeah.
What does that prove? That God doesn't exist?
What does what?
What does your questions prove? If there is evil in the world, what does it prove? If there is suffering, one second.
Yeah, go on.
If there is suffering in the world, if there is all this evil in the world, what does it prove? Does it prove this non-existence of God?
No, I'm just trying to understand the logic of things, right? Because there is so many things happening, but you have to throw some sort of logic by it.
Yeah.
And if logic comes correct and you say there is no problems, there is no error, and God hasn't done...
It's not about error.
What I just said, has God ever made a mistake?
Let me come back to you again.
No,
this is not about an error. This is not a human experiment that God has, in which human has a trial and error and God didn't know about it and God regretted it. What we're saying is, God has given in this world, which is not utopia. This world is a place of test. There will be suffering. There will be these kinds of evils and things like this. There will be pain, but there will also be joy. There will be a contrast between good and evil, and you acquainted with the faculty of choice, of knowing what is good and evil, you're obligated to fulfill your purpose in life by balancing these things and worshiping God, and then God will place you in a place of no evil, no pain, no suffering. That's paradise. Or you're not listening. You're formulating your question.
No, because
stop. No. When you asked a question,
what's
the end of it,
right?
Yeah.
So the problem of evil, that, when at the beginning when I was saying I have things that I think Christianity and Islam don't have good answers to.
Yeah.
The problem of evil is obviously one of those, right? It's a very famous kind of philosophical problem, whatever. So your point there is that because this world is a test, this life is a test. That's why there is evil in the world and suffering. So that makes sense. I would agree with that. But then what is the meaning of menial suffering, or for instance animal suffering? So animals don't have an afterlife.
Say two animals fought with each other, one broke his hand or horn or something like that. In the day of judgment, God will recompense them. God will recompense them.
But
even animals.
Do animals have a soul in Islam?
Animals? What do you think? I don't think animals have souls.
Well, yeah, so
animals, do they have souls?
Yeah, so if they don't have souls, then how do they have an afterlife?
No. They don't have afterlife.
Okay, so
they won't have afterlife.
Okay, so
in a day of judgment, if they have disputes like you're saying, questioning, what are they going to do? Something has happened, like one animal violated another animal, whatever. Yes, they will be given, and that will be it. That's it.
But so then, what in this life then?
Because the one reward, perpetual life, is the human that's going to have. That is what is God created us for. So the animals and so on and so forth, these are all, in fact, Allah says in the Quran, everything here, وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمُ الشَّمْسِ, even the sun has been created to be subservient to us. وَالْقَمَرِ, and the moon. Everything of the creation that you see has been created for us to be our subservient, so that we can enjoy our life and fulfill our obligation in this life.
Okay, but fine. But if you take that, there are millions of years during which there were no humans on the planet, right? There are millions of years where
I don't know if it's millions of years, but
yeah, at least
enough time.
Whatever, enough time.
Yeah.
So what was the point of all that then? All of that suffering that happened during that?
What do you mean by suffering?
Well, I mean,
God, look.
Okay, so
let's understand suffering again. When you say suffering, so when a lion eats a zebra or a deer, you're saying the zebra is suffering.
Yeah, pain, I guess.
Yeah, pain. And you're saying that shouldn't be the case. So the lion should have been created without any hunger or thirst.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what you're asking for is what will be provided in heaven, where you would not need to eat, but you will eat for pleasure.
Yeah, but precisely because I understand the point that you're making is that the meaning of pain and suffering for humans is that it's a test, it's to, all that kind of stuff. We're talking about. But for animals who don't get an afterlife, what's the point of their suffering?
Because they don't have the spiritual necessity to have an enjoyment or a punishment in the hereafter. God did not create them that way. God created them, and that's it. So if, for example, if an animal were to have, something was violated against them in the day of judgment, that will be it, and that will be it. That's it. They will be turned into a dust, and that will be it.
Yeah, I mean,
they don't need a continuous hereafter. This judgment is done between them, and that's it.
Yeah, but then to me, that's a difficult statement to reconcile with the fact that if you've got an animal that's suffering, not in a way that's completely independent of a human being.
No, I understand. When God gives His judgment, punishment and reward, nothing will be in such a way that will be called least of injustice. لَيْسَ بِظَلَّامٍ لِلْعَبِيدِ. He is not to the least unjust to His worshippers. So in the day of judgment, whatever recompense they have, everyone will be happy and content. You and I may disagree now. How can it be? How can a murderer, the victim, and the one who commit the criminal, at the end of the day judgment, they will have some kind of judgment. The victim himself, herself, or itself will agree to the judgment that is given, and the consequence that follows will be content with it. That is what we're talking about, because God will not be unjust to any of those things that we're describing in terms of pain and suffering. I gave an example, I think, before. The person who was in hellfire, say for a long time, was just dipped into heaven for a fraction of a second. And God, this is in the hadith of our Prophet ﷺ. I'm not just making this up. Did you know anything about sorrow, pain, suffering? that person may have been there for millions of years in hellfire. One dip in heaven will say, no, I knew nothing of pain and suffering prior. Because this recompense, the compensation that is provided, to give you an example of compensation, someone stole your watch. The compensation, £1 billion. All the cars you want, all the money you want, all the land you want. You would not think about loss anymore about your watch. Now with this money, you can get hundreds and thousands of watches. The compensation God provides, as He confirms and if He affirms, will be to such a scale, no one can complain against God. They will be happy and content. That's the level of justice that we are saying God will provide. So we have firm faith in that. In terms of the actual mechanism, in terms of what's going to happen, that's the detail. But God has confirmed, لَيْسَ بِظَلَّامٍ لِلْعَبِيدِ, for His worshippers or anyone, His slaves, He's not to the least unjust. Dhallam is like the highest oppressor, right? But He's not even to the least any of that. Because He is just al-adl. Not only adil, adl, like justice. Sometimes Christians say God is love, and we say God is loving. In Islam, one of the attributes of God is al-adl. Justice. Not just, but justice. Al-Haq, truth. You say like someone is truthful, but Allah is Al-Haq, truth. So yes, there are certain attributes in which the adjective is used in such a way rather than, say, a noun. Yeah? Just to demonstrate the grievousness of these concepts and attributes. So the problem of evil is only a problem to the atheists and the Christians because their theodicy is such that they may have to explain it in that way. In Islam, we believe Allah is wise as well as someone who is well-wisher of any good, like He is the one who is the source of all truth. Because of His wisdom, that is why He even says, for example, you see the good and the bad, the one who sees and the one who doesn't see, how can you judge equally? The contrast is there for us. Would you know what is happiness if you didn't know anything about pain? You would not appreciate in its full depth what is really, you see, when we suffer pain and then we have happiness before or after, we appreciate more. So the appreciation is in contrast.
Yeah, I think
that is why in this world you have that contrast.
That makes sense.
In heaven, there is no contrast, pure joy, pure happiness, no suffering, no sorrow, no grief.
But that makes sense because you've got the afterlife. So it makes sense for humans, but it doesn't make sense for animals.
As I said, the animals, they will have their recompense and their compensation that they will have. And even if that is the end of it, because God's plan, look, God could have, okay, one thing I want to ask you. Why do you expect God to make you live forever and forever? Why would you expect God to create you and give you a life of eternity with no end? Why? It's God's choice. He could create you and that's it. So He could create animals and that's it. They're only a mechanism in this life, how we understand and how we develop ourselves.
Animals die and suffer. Right?
Yeah, but I'm saying all of that has a compensation. People get killed, are compensated.
But the recompense is the afterlife.
No, I'm saying they do not have to have a continuous means of afterlife in which they have to live forever within the animal kingdom and so on and so forth. If their existence is annihilated and only thing is there, like if you wish something, I want to eat the meat of a bird, and the bird is now created, comes up to you, and then you eat of that meat and so on and so forth. But they do not have to have. If you want, for example, I'm sure, if you want, I want a pet dog in hereafter. This is your wishes. If that doesn't contradict anything of God, I'm sure it will be granted. But we don't go into all of these details if the guidance from Islam is silent about it. Like somebody says, I want to play football, I want to win. And he says, I want to win too in the match. Well, that cannot be granted. Why? Because you're generating contradictions. In heaven, there cannot be contradictions. There cannot be conflict of will. People say, look, in the Quran or in Islamic teaching, you believe everything that you wish will be granted. So you say, I want to play against Mansur, and I want to win, and Mansur wants to win. How can you win a game? Both cannot win. So this kind of wishing would not be given. Contradictions, logical impossibility will be removed.
Or I guess, so is it that...
And I gave an arbitrary example. There could be many examples where you generate contradictions, you create a very incoherent picture. What we are saying, the Quran tells you there will not be any ill feelings, any grief, and so on and so forth. That means our human psyche will be transformed in such a way in which you would not wish where there will be generation of conflict of will, where logical impossibilities arise. Logical impossibilities will not arise in heaven.
So I feel it's like one last point on that problem of evil, and I feel then I probably need to call it for a day. But again, but on that, so animals versus human, right? There's like a clear distinction between the two. Humans have souls, go to heaven, or to hell, but afterlife. Animals don't. But that is at odds with the fact that there's a continuum of evolution, and I'm not talking about necessarily the theory of evolution, but the facts of evolution, where it was animal, and at some point human, and there seems to be there's like a dichotomy. There's been something that's been said at some point. You're a human, you get a soul, you get to go to heaven, and you have free will, and then everything that comes before that doesn't. And that to me is
I understand your point. What you're saying is, look, all form of creation should have some reward or punishment. A tree, for example, you're saying that tree provided the shade. It provided so much fruits and vegetables. It should be rewarded. It should have a heavenly life, afterlife, and so on. This is the expectation you are coming up with. I'm saying God can decide to continue the existence of something as long as he wants, according to his wisdom. He can have human beings forever and forever if he wishes. He can have certain creation up to that point if he wishes, for example. This is the prerogative of God, how he wants to continue the perpetual existence of certain form of creation. So the recompense, the reward or the punishment you're saying, you are expecting everything that is here in this world, even the bacteria, even the viruses. Let's talk about them. There are good bacteria in our gut that help digestions. Are you expecting a reward for them? They should continue in the hereafter. You can bring in all of these things and you will say, I expect them to have a reward in heaven as well. So what we are saying is, God in his wisdom, he has certain creation in mind to be rewarded in the hereafter. In his world of creations, for example, he can create a world in which there are other creation with other rewards, other punishment. God is constantly creating. This world of ours is one of these many worlds. So we have a companion who says there's like a parallel worlds. There are parallel prophets, parallel you over there. God can create that. But what we're dealing with is our existence, our soul. You and I know, I'm not Camille and you're not Mansur. We have our individual existence and awareness of the existence. What is there for us is a continuity of life with given a new body of our soul, because what I am my soul with my body. That can be changed and rechanged if necessary. In the hereafter, it will be a different body. And a mechanism to enjoy what I've done here. And that enjoyment would be spiritual, would be physical, and so on. Now, if, for example, I'm saying, look, I'm not giving you a blanket statement about animals. I'm saying if there is nothing contradictory and people wish, and even God has some, I don't know all the text. If someone can correct me, if there are texts in which there are animals can live, no problem. I don't see any problems. But I'm saying, in general, even if there wasn't a afterlife for animals, this is the prerogative of God in which any suffering they had, they will be compensated and they will not feel in any way unjustly treated.
So I agree. I mean, you can explain away to some extent everything on that, but it is a very contrived. A very contrived.
I will come back with beneficial bacteria. According to your expectation, there should be beneficial bacteria having reward.
Well,
so we want now bacteria in heaven.
I'm not actually, there is an alternate explanation. The simpler explanation would be there is a God that has set up a bunch of rules, laws, and and created the universe, created the things, and let them, all of them, evolve and develop according to his plan, but it's not materially then intervening on, you'll get a reward, you won't get a reward. It's just like, it's all part of the thing.
The question is about continuity of existence. So we are told we will have continued existence either in heaven or in hell. Okay? The jinns is another creation, likewise. In terms of other creation, for example, now if somebody questioning about viruses and bacteria, certain bacteria is good for you, right? In their gut, they really help digest. You do know that, right? In fact, people take probiotic, full of bacteria, isn't it?
Yeah.
We actually consume bacteria for the goodness of our gut. So if people say now, okay, what's the reward for them in the hereafter? Should they be in heaven as well? Well, if God wants to have their bacterial heaven, of course He can have a bacterial heaven for them and so on. But God is interested in the humans in terms of what we are, rather than you interested in everything else. There are many things which are not necessary for us to delve into. If you do have questions, that's why the Quran at one point said, look, if you have questions like this while the Quran is being revealed, then it will be answered. Like if you have,
yeah, actually, a question on that. Because obviously in the Christian understanding, the reason why God cares about humans is because humans were created in the image of God. But that's not the case in Islam, right? So in Islam, why does God care about humans specifically, as opposed to everything else in His creation?
God considers human beings one of the best of creations. In the eyes of God, one of the best, ashraful makhluqat, one of the best of creations. Allah created us. In fact, if you think about it, we are the top of the food chain in that manner. In fact, human beings are going to space, not an elephant or a bacteria, human beings. So God created us in this way, and He has the whole human project in a way that the consequences of them is going to be either eternal heaven or eternal hell, like that. But in doing so, human beings are placed in an environment in which there are other forms of creation, and we have to encounter and engage with these creations in the best possible way. That is why Islam says look after your environment and look after the things in your environment. Don't go and kill unnecessarily, unless, for example, for food and so on. So we can't have a farm of rabbits only for fun by hunting with our foxes. Totally forbidden, because that's suffering for fun. But God has granted us permission to consume some animals for food. But He doesn't grant us to eat all forms of food, because He says there are some which are good for you and some which are not. Halal and tayyiba, we talked about pure and permissible. So we only consume what God has given permission for, which are by their nature, they're good and they're permissible.
If you're interested, does He show you where they believe also that
Camille?
film was made?
What's any next question?
I mean, I think for today's probably enough.
Okay, that's
more
fine.
that I need to go and read. I think the big thing that I need to, I feel like that's going to be
Inimitability. Certainly. Do watch the lecture, and in the meantime, take care. And
yeah, thank you again.
keep your
I
questions.
just want to say again, thank you for your time, and thank you for being generous with your time. I really appreciate it.
No, you've been wonderful. Even with the hecklers, you stood your ground, and you told the heckler to go away. That was really, really good, and I hope the heckler at least appreciates what it means.
But, the whole hecklers, whatever. Ultimately, something that. Wait, hang on. I just want to say something about engaging with the whole Christians and Muslims. A lot of what you see on the internet is about clashes between the two. I'm actually much more interested in engaging honestly with, and I find that all the Muslims that I've interacted personally have been lovely people. Really interesting what I have to say. I'm interested in what you have to say as well. So thank you. And I think that shows in the videos that you've got. So
You take care. Until next time.
next time.
See you later. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Oh, is it right?
جزاك الله brother.